Okay, I think it's time to start. We've got a couple more people joining us and coming on board. So we'll take a bit of a slow start. And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome from a sunny Sydney on this Thursday afternoon. I'd like to introduce some colleagues to you. Firstly, on the line from Melbourne, I've got Anthony from Conserve joining us. Welcome, Anthony. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
G'day, Mark. How are you? Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining in.
So today we're going to show you a little bit more on the value and integration of Tosibox into your ecosystem and how you can really create secure connectivity in an easy and friendly manner without any concerns around service providers, internet connections, and how you have secure and scalable solutions that are not in conflict with any legacy systems or new systems that you deploy. So we'll start with, sorry, I'm just trying to, there we go. An opening slide, and just to bring the picture relative to what we look at in today's days and age. This was something that came up about a month ago. Detroit newspaper, where a signboard on the I-75 was hacked, and the hackers published porn onto the site for everyone to see. So it's relative to our lives every single day. We might not see the risk, we might not understand the need until that risk arrives on our doorstep, but it's relative. I did a quick search and had a look from a point of view of cyber breaches. 2019 comes up with 21.1 million hits for what is available around cyber breaches in 2019. So it's really relevant to what we're talking about. It's not something that is something for the future. It's here, it's now, and Tosibox is around to say, okay, we've come to make your lives easier. How are we going to make those easier? When we have a look at the historical ecosystem, on the left-hand side, we had those things and devices that sat in a legacy environment. Those devices were publishing data, providing us with the analytics and the visual, but the challenge always was those devices and things were publishing data on premise, on facility, on site, within its ecosystem. And there was never any need to push that data out into the other areas. Then along came cloud technology, along came digitization and the whole evolution of technology as we know it. And through that evolution, so we saw a gap in the ecosystem and chain. And that gap now was a challenge around the fact that there was a missing link. And with Tosibox technology, we fill that missing link. So where you're taking your devices from Conserve, your CI-534 IO, your Conserve Niagara controllers, and you're connecting them up into the environment now, and you're looking to get multiple sources of data back to a central point. Tosibox is the secure and scalable solution to do just that. On the right-hand side, we visualize the Niagaras, the SkySparks, and all the other platforms. Those would remain the same. We're agnostic from a connection. We're giving you the data that comes out of your unit, and we're providing it to you in the platform and environment where you want it. So edge to anywhere connectivity, but without the risk or concern around compatibility or around, is the solution going to work? Deploy the locks and keys, put it into your environment, and you're ready to go. When we have a look at Tosibox technology, it is what we call a complete edge-to-edge digital ecosystem, complete networking ecosystem management. So allowing you to create this network and your own private network without having the concern about any external vendors. You're able to take locks and keys and devices, you're able to deploy them into the different environments, and through that deployment, you've created your own private network, agnostic of the type of internet connection, agnostic of the vendor. So an extension of an Ethernet cable with no limitations. We do it in both layer 2 and layer 3 connectivity with remote maintenance and warranty work, continuous monitoring and data acquisition. We have a full end-to-end security, including built-in audit trails. We allow for the edge and or cloud data acquisition collection. So whether you're pulling it through on the edge and keeping it there, or pushing it into cloud, or a hybrid solution of both, we can facilitate for that environment. The fact that we can do unlimited network scalability. So there's no limitations around creating these connections. We've got locks, those are deployed out in the facilities. We've got keys, and through the serialization of these locks and keys, however you see the ecosystem drawn out, you're able to connect it in your environment. And then most important, the fact that we can connect multiple IP-based systems and irrelevant of what they are. So whether you've got your BMS automation solution, whether you've got your access control, your lighting, HVAC, whatever it may be in the ecosystem, we're able to bring all of that together and bring all those IP data back into a central point to now create that central data pool of environment that Niagara or whatever platform you're using is able to then pull that data out of. Historical times saw us creating these networks in a very complex manner. So we used to use things like DYN, DNS, static IP, or having IT departments that were creating those complex connections. This complexity took us days and weeks to set up and to manage. With that, it had a very high cost of setup and ongoing ownership. And then the security, both human error, vulnerability were both very high because was the system set up properly? Was it dynamic to manage the adaptation in the environment? And like where we battle in corporate VPNs, it didn't have the flexibility that allowed you to be able to connect into an environment from anywhere. It was designed around the network that you'd created in that ecosystem. Along came the cellular-based solutions. They offered a value-added service around static IPs, port forwarding, and creating your own private APN. This simplified the complexity, reduced the cost, okay, but still maintained the risk and security. So it was the next level in evolution on technology around offering customers a hell of a lot easier solution, okay, but not necessarily a secure solution. Then we saw the evolution and development of cloud-based solutions, OEM manufacturers that then went and developed their own cloud platform, which had a separate set of challenges around complexity, cost, and security, and didn't really eliminate much apart from the fact that it was an all-encumbered solution. From Tosibox's comparison to this, we've had a look to say now that we've removed all complexity, we've reduced the cost, and we've eliminated the security aspect. So when we have a look at all these areas, we feel we are the solution to provide clients with what they need for a single platform that is still fully transparent, okay, and is owned by the owner of the equipment. So once this ecosystem is created, we as Tosibox have no visualization of data or control of hardware in the ecosystem. You as the owner of that ecosystem have the control. When we have a look at why Tosibox is such a unique solution and preferred solution, and I think to make the statement at this point, we as Tosibox can do what no one else can do. So we are unique in the way we do things. We have no competitors in this environment. And once you've understood and played with the Tosibox ecosystem, you will understand the uniqueness around that. The first value proposition and where we've won a lot of awards is the fact that we can self-create VPN networks, eliminating that human error. So when we have a look at VPN, we don't do anything special on our VPN technology. We use SSL and TLS certification So all of that is common IT practices that are used in industry. What we've done differently is we've packaged and automated that whole ecosystem to be able to be done in minutes and seconds, okay, for scalability around ecosystems without the concern around human error. We've also developed our solution in the fact that there's no third-party cloud providers involved. So you own the cloud, you own the environment you're publishing your data into, and you decide where that data is going to go. Everything that we do, irrelevant on the complexity of the system, runs on a point-to-point data flow with a 256-bit AES encryption. So once again, the encryption side is nothing new or different to what everyone else is doing. We've packaged it differently. We've automated networking in order to create these easy, secure, and scalable connections. Everything that we do is on all networks physical first multi-factor authentication. So what do I mean by that? I mean that we have USB keys. The USB key is serialized with the lock. Sorry about that. And based on that serialization, you've created your physical first multi-factor authentication. We have no need for static or public IP addresses. So you're deploying locks out into the field, you're giving it an internet connection. You don't need to have a concern around a static or public IP on that internet connection. You can give it a data connection and it's ready to go. We have the unique drag and drop and device level access control for simplicity yet security. So that's within our VCL solution that allows you to create these access groups. The CEO coming into the organization has access to visualize what he needs to see. The service technician coming at the bottom comes into the ecosystem, and only what he's serialized that he's responsible to service he will see, irrelevant of how big the ecosystem is. So you're able to create these pockets in a drag and drop process in a simplified manner in order to manage your teams, whether it be service, whether it be maintenance managers, CEOs, whatever it may be, and external service providers in the whole ecosystem. We have over-the-air updates for security and software. So what does that mean? It means that once you've deployed a lock in the field, you don't ever have to worry about the concern around the updates on the firmware and development of that lock. We update those units free of charge as part of the ecosystem. It doesn't cost you anything on an annual license fee. It doesn't cost you anything additional. We publish data to keep those units up to date at all times. So you're buying a device that's not dating. When we then have a look at the other end, obviously we are speaking about environments where you're talking about OT installations in facility, in environments, but there's always the concern around the IT side of things. So we've brought in here a software platform called VCL that then allows you to comply with both IT and OT environments with no need for special ports for the IT side. All we need is one outbound port. No need for static IP addresses from IT. No need for sophisticated LAN-side IT functionality. The VCL works behind the IT existing firewall and is a firewall to create fully secure subnetworks. It's built as a Class A network behind a lock. Networking technology designed in accordance with IT professionals that already know what they're having. And last but not least, if you don't want to be let down on the IT backbone, you can create your own network via cellular networking. When we now have a look at these ecosystems, we spoke about the complexity and building these different systems. Here are 4 different diagrams now on different types of ecosystems and what they can look like by purely deploying hardware. So what do I mean by deploying hardware? You've got the locks and keys that we've spoken about. In diagram number 1, we've serialized a key with 3 locks. In diagram number 2, we've serialized 3 keys with a lock. In diagram 3, we've got the same as diagram 1, but we've got an external service provider that we've given access to. And then in diagram 4, we're pulling all the data up to a central server. All of these ecosystems are created within minutes by a semi-skilled individual. So when I say semi-skilled, as long as the person understands what an IP address is, what a subnet is, okay, and where to plug an Ethernet cable into a WAN port, or just basic connectivity, you're able to deploy these connections. Even if you don't have the basic knowledge, you can read the documentation and most probably do the same in a couple of minutes as well. So it shows you the flexibility around the ecosystem that you can create. Once you've created these ecosystems, I've brought in a case study here on where the scalability then lies. So this is an environment where we've got a retailer. The retailer has 5,500 employees, 323 outlets, and 2,500 appliances that are managed by more than 100 external partners. Their challenge was that they had deployed a single area and environment where all devices, whether it was OT or IT that was connected, was coming through a single router into the environment, and all their external partners were coming in and visualizing everything, whether it was their point of sale, their CCTV, or whatever it may be. So there was no segmentation in this for the individuals and what their needs were. They then approached us to say, okay, they needed us to build a differentiated OT network for their devices and systems. So what did they want? They wanted to have access to the OT environment in order to be able to give connectivity in a secure and manageable manner to their external partners. And through that, we were able to deploy our technology into the environment to change their architecture, segmenting the IT and OT, and everything that sat in the OT environment was now beyond the Tosibox lock. So whether it was the lifts, the HVAC, the lighting, the cooling systems, access control, whatever it may be, was all sitting beyond that point. And now within that ecosystem, they have the ability with their external partners and service vendors to be able to manage those 323 outlets. And within that management, they're also able to give rights to each and every service technician from the external partners, managing it, having a full audit trail around it, and those service partners coming in can only see what they're authorized to see. So what do I mean by that? The HVAC company comes in and all they will see in their ecosystem for their key that's configured is 323 HVAC systems, and that's it. Unless something else is allowed to be configured in by the administrator, which would be the master key holder of the VCL in the solution, unless there's changes made around that, that's all they would see. Okay. At this point now, I'm going to hand over to Anthony just to go through a little bit more on the briefing on the hardware side of things. So Anthony, if you can just give us a little bit of an overview on the controllers that we've got up here and a bit more information around that.
Absolutely. So Conserve has been working with a partner in the US to bring best-in-class Edge IoT Niagara controllers into this market. And what we have and what's on display, if you can see the little camera there, is a CI-534. A CI-534 device is a Niagara-enabled controller, so it's running the full Niagara system, just as you would see on a Jace, with 34 points of I/O on board. The power of the CI-534 device is that, aside from its onboard I/O, you can plug in expansion modules, each with 34 points of I/O, up to 8 sets in total. The CI-534 device comes in relatively competitive in terms of price and is really quite powerful when you compare it to devices such as the Jace. I'm also displaying in this hardware set a Jace controller. A Jace controller runs the Niagara framework. And what I will be showing to you later on is the connectivity that you can achieve between a JACE controller and the CI-534, or between the CI-534 and its expansion products. And if you're not so familiar with the Niagara framework, I will give you an overview of that a little bit later on as well. So that's what you see in front of you. I've got a few lights, LEDs hooked up as well, and we can visualize some changes a little bit later on. We can go through it all in a bit more detail after.
Okay, great. Anthony, thank you very much for that.
Yes.
So now let's flip forward to the next one. Now what we're going to have a look at is we've pulled up a diagram here. The diagram shows you a little bit more around the application and where these devices would fit into the ecosystem. You'll also notice the familiar orange block and line where the Tosibox is included and pulls the data up then into the environment. That orange line can expand further onto the blue line. So for the cloud environment, where you could then put your VCL into the cloud and create the same connectivity into the cloud environment if you wanted that secure publishing of data over your own private network. So quite easy to do. So what we're going to start with today, can everyone see the LOC 500 in the equation? And Anthony, maybe you can just give me a hand through this a bit. Can you see the LOC 500 there?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. So what we're going to do in order to create a secure connection, I've given the LOC 500 its power. So I've got it plugged into an external power support. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the key. I'm putting my key into the lock. I'm waiting for about 10 seconds, and through serializing the USB into the physical lock and pulling it out, I've now created a secure connection. So what I've done is I've created and shared the automated process of building these networks so that users are able to then connect into the environment without the concern, what IP am I using? What internet connection am I using? Who's my service provider? And there's no concern around it. This physical device I have connected up to the Wi-Fi in my office. So I've used a normal IINet internet connection. We've got a nice throughput speed. They tell me 50 megabits, but it's closer to 30. And when I do the speed test, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this unit, and you'll notice on the screen now you have a pop-up. The pop-up in the background shows you around the setup of the device. You would double click on the setup for the first run. Obviously, in the case where I use this on a regular basis, it's coming up and asking me for my password. I would put in the password into my ecosystem. And through doing that, I now have the ability to visualize all the different units that I'm allowed to connect to. I'm going to disconnect on both of these. So everything sitting in red are devices that I have been serialized with, or my key is serialized with, but I don't currently have an internet connection with. That could be because the internet connection is down, or alternatively, that could be because there's no power to the unit. Then everything in orange has an internet connection and it's ready for me to connect to, but I'm not physically connected to it. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to connect into the device that I'm showing you there, the LOC 500. And through there, once that device goes green, it will automatically change across there. There we go. And it shows me now that I'm connected to the unit and I'm ready to go. What do we have to do now? Now we have to go and say, well, in order for us to be able to connect to the devices that we are wanting to communicate with in the field, we have to be able to tell the lock, number one, what IP range the devices are sitting on in order for it to be able to talk the same language, okay? And then from there, then we need to register these devices. I'm going to go through this process now of doing that. And once I've done that, I'm going to pass it across to Anthony, who will then, sitting out of Melbourne, be able to connect into these devices and start showing you further from a Niagara framework. So when we double click onto that, It opens up a user interface. This user interface now shows us exactly what's going on from a status. Here you can see wireless LAN, so it's connected on my Wi-Fi. Here it's picked up the Wi-Fi IP. So I haven't had to configure or do anything in the ecosystem. I've just put in the username and password for the Wi-Fi and we're ready to go off it. It also tells me here that I have the possibility for an external modem or an internal modem. So the LOC 500 that we're using here has built-in dual SIM functionality. So it allows you to put 2 different SIM cards from 2 different service providers into the unit and has a failover process. So if the one service provider goes down, you've at least got a backup and redundancy around it. On the top right-hand corner, we log into the device. What you'll notice on the bottom of the unit is there's a whole lot of credentials, and there you'll find a unique password where you then take the password, you put it into the password field, you log into the device, and once you've logged in, now we're live. I'm connected, and it doesn't matter how far away this unit is. It would work in the same manner where you can get onto the user interface of the device, and through accessing the user interface of the device, you have a whole lot of settings where you can start managing the device, including rebooting it, including software updates, and everything that goes with it. The second side we have is the access to the full networking site. So whether it's the LAN, the WAN, the internal and external modems, the Wi-Fi, static routing, and DHCP, and everything else that goes with it. As mentioned, we need to identify the IP. In this case, we've already put in a pre-configured IP that matches the Conserve range, which was the 192.168.35.11 with a subnet of 255.255.255.0. At the bottom of the page, you'll notice a save block. You save that information and you're ready to go on step 1. Step 2 of the ecosystem, once you've saved that, and oh, by the way, at that point, when you create save, what's going to happen is the lock is going to reboot itself. You're going to lose connectivity. It's going to reconnect up to the ecosystem. And when it reconnects, that IP address that you put in now sits in the LAN environment over there with the subnet over there. So it's now adopted and taken on the new settings for the environment that it needs to connect to. Then from there, and sorry, excuse me. Sorry about that. Then from there, you have the ability to start adding devices. We can manage as many different external IP connections as you need over a single device. So what do I mean by that? If you've got a fully populated network that you need to connect into, you can put a Tosibox onto the network. As long as it's the same subnet, you can put in a spare IP address for the range. And over here, we have the ability to scan the LAN network. So on bigger systems where you've got a lot of devices, I suggest scanning the LAN network, getting a coffee, coming back, and when you're finished, you'll have all your populated devices. Or an environment where you've got less devices, you have the ability to add it manually. You can put in the device name, you can put in the IP address and all the other bits and pieces that goes with it. Once you're finished, you would save it. As you'll notice here, you also have the functionality for HTTP or HTTPS. We can select HTTP and it'll publish a standard port, or on the HTTPS, it'll change it to 443. If you have a unique port configuration, it's as easy as going and saying, okay, it's 2253, you save it, and then it will save in those configurations. Once you've done that, your device will then pop up in the environment. And at the moment, and the reason why we've left it like this is you'll notice that the lights are currently red. And the reason why the lights are currently red is there's nothing currently communicating with it. However, if I now take the LOC 500 and I just place it to the side, here I've got a yellow cable going into the Conserve Niagara controller, which I'm going to plug into LAN port 1. Here I've got a black LAN cable going into the CI-534 Conserve unit, which I'm going to plug into a second LAN port. Okay. and it takes a couple seconds to update. Let me just move that out the way. And before long, what will happen is you'll notice that these lights then go from red to green. I'm just checking my connections here. Yeah, all is good. Okay, so we just got to give it a second. Okay, I think, okay, and there we go. There's the first one up and running, and the second one will follow suit. There we go, second one up. So now, what have I done? I have no technical knowledge or understanding of how Conserve's controllers work, nor have I had to have any understanding on how to create secure connections. All I've done is I've added the power to a lock. I have serialized the lock and key. I have given the lock an IP address, and I have searched for devices. And by doing that, I have now created a secure connection into that environment. Now what I need to do is I'm saying, okay, great. As the second part of it, I'm now going to go back into my key, and I'm going to give Conserve access to the system. So at the moment, we've got their license there. We're going to remove that license. And we're going to say yes. Okay, next, finish. Okay. So now what we've done in the ecosystem was where they had previous access, we can close that, and when we reopen that, it will have changed. Okay, so you'll notice now within the key environment, there's no access apart from the key that I'm using currently. So I've automatically retracted the rights from an external vendor. Now I'm going and saying, okay, Anthony, I want to give you rights to the system so that you can start communicating from Melbourne with the equipment that's sitting on my desk in Sydney. So I'm going to manage there. I'm going to create a new subkey. You have the ability to do the subkey in a physical key, so a USB key, or alternatively in a soft key. We're going to call it Conserve. We're going to go next. Okay, and what happens here is a unique code is created. I'm going to take that code and I'm going to copy it. So highlight on it. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to open up a window quickly. I'm going to add a new email, and I'm going to send an email to Anthony that says software license. While I'm doing this, Anthony, if you could please just download the soft key software off Tosibox's website.
Absolutely can. So I've navigated to the Tosibox website. And I've downloaded the soft key, so I'm ready to go.
Okay, so I'm going to finish that process. And now you'll notice in the activation that it says waiting for activation. Once Anthony receives the unique code that I've sent him, he's going to open up the software. It's going to ask him for the activation code license. He's going to place that activation code license into his software, and he's going to follow through the process to the end. And automatically what will happen, and remember we spoke about that physical first multi-factor authentication. So once again, it's not just the fact of me sending Anthony a password, he accepts the password and he's got access. That's too easy for people to manipulate. So what's happening here is it's getting sent to Anthony. He now has to accept it. And once he's accepted it, the administrator gets notified of the acceptance, and they are able to then set up the rights on what Anthony is allowed to connect to. So we'll wait for Anthony to finish that process.
Right, so I have actually received the code, and it's asking me input activation code. I've pasted it in. I'm clicking next. I have to set myself the password, so I'll do so. something very secure. Follow next, and it's telling me activating currently. Okay, activation complete.
There we go. So now you can see on the screen, I've received Anthony's confirmation. It's giving me more on the details of the user account, the laptop name, and more information on what's on the laptop. And it's saying to me, do I want to accept these credentials? So now I've been authenticated. I'm happy with the user. I can either accept or reject. I accept it because I'm happy with that. And it's going to say to me on the next step now, do I want to set up the access rights? So I can go yes. And remember, we've seen all those devices which are behind in the main screen. Now it shows you here all the different devices, and the ones that are grayed out has a comment next to them, no master key rights. So that means that I'm serialized with those devices, but I'm a sub-key of those devices. I'm not the master of those devices, purely through serialization and ticking of blocks. So I can't issue any further rights to that. However, I'm the master for these two boxes in my ecosystem. And the second one down there is the lock 500. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click on here where it shows me a nice little feature that says, okay, if all the boxes that I'm connecting to are on a layer 3 connectivity, instead of having to set that up in a manual process, I can just tick a block there that allows for layer 3 connections on all of them. Okay, I can go next, I can go save, and I've now created connectivity for that environment for Anthony to connect into in a secure and safe manner. So we tick him off
just
there.
Pop up on my screen now. It says access rights changed, and my new access rights are Tosibox lock TB109AB, etc., etc.
Okay, there we go. So as we see on the screen. So what I'm going to do now, Anthony, is I'm going to pass it over to you, and I'm going to give you the screen now as presenter to share with everyone on the webinar now what you're seeing and the possibility for connectivity from your perspective.
Sure thing, will do. Okay, so sure you can see my screen. This is what I can see now from my side, that Mark's given me access to the system. I'm here in Melbourne, and Mark's in Sydney. So let's see if I can connect in and communicate to the devices that are sitting on his desk there. It's currently saying connecting. Let's give it a second. Still connecting. Shouldn't be too long.
Okay, and I think just to highlight, and one thing to mention, obviously for the first connection, it needs to understand the path, so it does take a little bit longer in the first connection, but then after that, the whole process is speeded up.
That's right. So we're connected now, so I can see my two devices that are sitting on Mark's desk. So I've got one device, which is 192.168.35.195. That just happens to be the Jace controller that you see on the left-hand side of your screen. And 35.222, that just happens to be the CI-534 controller that you see in the middle of your screen. So that's the one with the green label there. So I guess now that I'm connected, I have free reign to operate as if I am in the same building as these devices, as if I'm connected physically with an Ethernet cable. So the range of possibilities for me now, if this was a real application in a real building, is endless. So rather than me having to send a technician down to site to check on this controller or do modifications that my customers ask for, I can simply connect in the same way that we've done just now and get in, and I have full access as if I was sitting right in front of it. This is the power of Tosibox, and this is what I hope in the building and automation industry you'll see is really, really useful. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk you through a little bit about the hardware that I'm connecting to and the software that runs on the devices. So what we've got is the CI-534 and the Jace controller. Both of these are running the Tridium Niagara framework. So a lot of you may already be familiar with the Tridium Niagara framework. However, if not, I'll give you a brief rundown. The Tridium Niagara framework is an automation and integration platform that allows you to, with open technologies bring together lots of other communication protocols, other systems, bring data into one central place and do all your control, all your automation, all your history logging, and everything in one central place to control your entire building or your entire ecosystem that you're building upon. Now, I mentioned building automation because it's probably the most common use case for the Niagara framework. However, the Niagara framework is applicable anywhere. We've heard case studies of the Niagara framework being used in data centers and used in airports and used in a whole range of different. So the Niagara framework itself is really powerful for integration, for control, for graphics, a whole range of things. Now, if you can see my screen, this one, what I'm going to do right now is open up my Niagara engineering tool. So this is called the workbench. I hope you can see it. I'm now going to connect to the two devices that are sitting on Mark's desk. I'm connected to my controller, so this just happens to be the Jace controller. So the Jace controller is an embedded device, particularly used for the Niagara environment. Now, you can also run the Niagara environment on a server PC or similar, but the Niagara Jace is really powerful for the edge control. You can run a whole building HVAC system from a Jace. You can do all the integration from a Jace, but you might have a server-based Niagara instance to host all your graphics, for example. So right now I'm connected to the Jace, and what I want to show you is the power of Jace to Jace connection and CI-534 to CI-534 IO connection. So I'll just log in. Everything's still secure here, so I'm securely connected to Mark's office. I'm on my devices. There's password protection on everything also. So let me show you now how I can get in and look at the IO, the 34 points of IO or 68 points that are sitting on that desk there, so 34 on each device. How I can just easily go and discover, so I can just hit this discover button and that will show me every device, CI-534 and its sub IO devices that are on the network. I could just quickly hit discover and it will bring everything up. You can see I've done that already. And then I can look at all of the points that are within each device. So I've brought in a subset of points here, but I could pull in any more points that are present. So for example, the rest that I haven't brought in, that could be the universal inputs. So they're the 0 to 10 volts or the 4 to 20 milliamps, dry contact, similar. Could be the digital outputs, so they're the relay outputs, or the analog outputs, they're the 0 to 10 volts. So I can bring them in and just drag and drop them. So let's do it on one that I haven't used before. So this is the expansion module. The communication between the CI-534 and the expansion module is actually a two-wire bus. We call it the CI-IO bus. All of the communication is done through those two wires. So let's bring in these points here. Okay, done. And let's bring in a few more points here. After a few seconds, the points will register and we'll be able to communicate to these points. And it was just that easy. That's all I need to do. Hit discover a couple of times, and now I'm ready to read the points that are in my IO network. To show you, let's see if I get some noise here. I'm sure if you'll be able to see the lights on Mark's desk. Maybe not. Maybe you can't visualize it on the screen, but there are some lights that should be turning on as I'm turning these digital outputs on. The lights on the CI-534 should be active. So Mark, how many lights blue lights on the top can you see?
So
is it 4 lights?
I've got a couple. Yeah, I've got a couple lights. 4 lights on the first CI-534 that are popped up here now, so I can see what's going on that side.
So these are emulating real digital outputs. So those outputs might be commands to start chillers or start pumps or enable lighting or similar. But in automation, you don't just want to manually turn things on and off. We need to be able to control things with some logic. So let me show you how easy it is to create logic. Niagara uses not programming code, but programming blocks, which should be quite familiar to most people. A lot of tools use the same. Let me show you. So if I go into somewhere, let's just create a new folder. I can now just go to my palette and start dragging blocks in that I need. For example, I could have a numeric points. I could have a ramp, for example, or a sine wave. I can do logic such as greater than, less than, and there's a whole range of things. It's just very simple. So let's say something like, if I was to say 50 here, I can now bind these points together and say, if the output of my sine wave is greater than 50, give me a output. All right, and let's just hook this up. This is how easy it is to put together some logic. Now I've got this output that's being driven by my logic. It can be as complex as you need it to be. And all I have to do now to link that to my outputs, the outputs that are connected to the physical world, is right click and link mark. And then let's go back to my CI-534 here. All right, and I will just, oops, pardon me, wrong thing. I would just link from the output into a priority. Let's say priority 10. Priority 10 is generally quite safe. And I'll do this for a few outputs. And Mark, you should be seeing on your end, as on the screen it turns from false to true, you should be seeing those lights light up. So
yeah,
shortly.
So I've got some lights coming on over there. Okay, so we can see now the real-time access of this equipment. The latency is low. You're having the communication onto the Niagara framework. And I think to highlight, folks, whether you've got one connected solution like we're visualizing here, or you've got 100 solutions in the field, and you've got controllers talking to controllers and a complex ecosystem, it's all easy and scaled in the same manner. So we're just extending those Ethernet cables between all those facilities that you manage, all those facilities you're setting up, or maybe even an owner of those facilities. We're able to connect them up in a safe and secure manner that is easy to deploy.
Next thing I want to show you is...
Okay, sorry, carry on.
I just want to quickly show you Niagara to Niagara connection. So the Niagara framework has its own communication protocol called the Fox network. And what I've done here is I've set up communication between the CI-534 and the Jace controller there, where I can read points, I can share histories, I can share alarming. So I've actually pulled in some points already to show you an example. So I'm reading some occupancy points from the Jace and some temperature points from the Jace. But perhaps there's more in this device. I could, of course, search, show me all the folders, Jace. Maybe I want to pull in the lux sensor, outdoor lux sensor. Maybe I want to pull in some data from the chill water plant. And bring all this data in. And just like that, my CI-534 is now reading data from the Jace. Now this Jace could be pulling in data from a whole range of different things, and we've just connected them really quite easily. Once I've got that data, I can do with it what I need. Again, it could be logic, it could be anything. In this case, what I want to do is create a dashboard. So I'll show you how easy it is to create a dashboard. Here's what I've previously created. Just quickly log in. So here's a basic dashboard that I previously created. But now with the new points that I brought in from my Jace, I want to add some more things in. So what I would do is I would just edit this, click edit. I would just click my points, drag them onto the screen, and just like that, I can create some pretty cool graphics. Let me show you. So these are occupancy, so I can have occupancy there. That's going to populate this dashboard with some occupancy labels. Just separate them a little. And maybe I'll bring in this time the labels. The labels that correspond. So on and so forth. I would hit save. And now let's check my screen here. Hit refresh. And now my graphic, this is a fully HTML5 graphic, is viewable in the web browser. I can see what I've thrown on here. Of course, this is a very simple example, but you can build as complex a dashboard as you like. This is really quite a powerful tool. So within the Niagara, you've got the integration portion, you've got the control and automation portion, the history portion, which I haven't shown you today, but I'll save that for another webinar, and the graphics portion there. So really powerful tool for the building automation industry, or for any other vertical that you currently work in. Easy to bring things together, and Tosibox makes it easy to access your sites remotely and do any programming, block logic that you need to from remote. Now, I think we're probably getting close to time. So, Mark, what do you think? Let's open it up to any questions. If you do have any questions, anybody, please do post them in the chat, and we can have a quick chat about any questions that you may have.
Yeah, and Anthony, I think from my perspective, I'm going to take control of the screen again, and I'm just going to flip over to the last of the visual side for clients just to have a look at. So in closing here, we spoke about those different applications. Here is a prime example out of the building automation industry. It's a company that has 600 buildings and over 200 users with 6 servers on their LAN, and obviously the inclusion of our VCL software. And you'll see from the diagram how the ecosystem looks. So depending on what you're looking to achieve, so you have the ability to create these ecosystems for your clients, for your own management tools. So whether you're doing management of facilities as a facility owner, whether you're doing service level agreements for end clients and so forth, you can create an ecosystem with the external components and manage your own private network out to these facilities and endpoints as if they were part of your LAN network. So we've removed all boundaries and limitations around creating secure and scalable network. So yeah, here's an example of it. You'll also notice on the bottom with the orange dots, it makes reference to service people. We allow for the movement and flexibility. So we've shown you a USB key for accessing the ecosystem, accessing the locks. We also have mobile apps for iOS and Android. So users could have tablets or smart devices that they then have the ability to access these networks and these environments on the go without the concern of IP addresses, service providers, what type of connection they're using, in a safe and secure manner. I watched a TV program this morning on Channel 9 where it highlighted on the fact that we shouldn't use our mobile phones on public Wi-Fi's when we're connecting to do our banking and those intricate environments of security. If the banking sector used Tosibox as a technology, it would not be a concern because we would still create a secure connection between your device and the platform we're connecting to, like we've shown you here. So I think in closing, my last and final slide for the day, Tosibox is a company developed originally out of Oulu in Finland. We've secured networks in more than 130 countries around the world with in excess of 100,000 units sold, and I'm talking about endpoint units sold in the global market annually. So this is not something where we're talking about a proof of concept or something we're testing and trialing. These are mature technologies that we deploy in building automation on a daily basis. Okay, so if you're looking for a solution, let the guys at Conserve supply you with some demo kit. Let's get your equipment connected up. Let's get you some training done and really show you the value of how Tosibox can secure your environment. And I think in closing, there doesn't seem to be any questions coming through, so we must have answered everything. So to wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to us for this afternoon. Hopefully we haven't run too much over schedule. Now we're stealing at a minute into time, so good planning. Feel free to make contact with both myself and Anthony for any requirements that you've got around Tosibox. We do have demo units available and other things that you can test. So whether it's the VCL in the web environment or on-premise, locks, keys, or whatever it may be in the ecosystem, they're available for demo to really have that user experience. Once you've experienced that, you're never going to go back off it. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Anthony.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Bye.